Why is it that today immoral behavior is more widespread than ever before? The answer is that it depends on the free will of mankind. To some extent, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is engineering everything in the world. And also, to some extent, it depends on the free will of mankind. Now, up to recently, the world benefited from our Torah. The nations had Bible morals. Since the downfall of the Roman Empire, most of mankind lived by biblical principles. The Bible said homosexuality is an abomination and is punishable by death. So after the fall of the Roman Empire, this became the norm. It doesn't mean that the Gentiles were perfect in this. However, it certainly was repressed. We still remember, up till recently, it was considered an abomination. And people couldn't hold any public office, couldn't even be a street cleaner, and certainly not a fireman, certainly not a policeman. However, we have to realize among the changes in the world, and this is a bitter truth, the Jewish people are many times the yeast that causes the rising of the dough. When the Jewish people themselves are most loyal to the Torah, then there goes forth an emanation, an influence for the nations of the world are loyal also to their concept of biblical ideology. More or less, they cling to certain principles, but it's because the heart of the world, the Am Yisrael, is flaming with idealism. But when the Jewish people in the last 100 years began defecting from the Torah, and they began deteriorating, then all over the world there set in a parallel deterioration. That's when evolution raised its head in England almost 150 years ago, and that's when immorality began entering into literature. Up till not long ago, most literature was careful to avoid any breath of immorality. And after a while, it began breaking out more and more. And if you look at the causes of today's breakdown, you'll see Jews are at the root of most of these things. Who was it that gave such a push to the surge of homosexuality in New York City, if not Koch, who came in and suddenly, against the wishes of the city council, he issued an executive order giving gay rights in the public employment. That was a thunderbolt. And I'm sorry to say, a number of Jewish councilmen, liberals, who backed him. It's a pity that there were Irishmen who fought against this, and Italians. That's a tragedy of tragedies. And that's going to cause the goal, the exile will continue longer and longer because of that. Who is the mayor of that wicked city, San Francisco? Dianne Feinstein. Dianne Feinstein, a Jewish mayor, a woman. And who was the man who was killed? He's the ideal of the homosexuals in San Francisco. Milk. A man named Milk. A decent Gentile shot him because of his spreading homosexuality. The leaders, not all Jews, of course, but it's a great tragedy. Reform rabbis came out in favor of legitimizing homosexuality. And so, when Jews forsake the Torah, so it has an effect. The nations of the world, in a mysterious way, but nonetheless effective way, they let down also their principles, and they began to become ruined, and therefore we see in all sides today the results. So there are two elements. One element is the free will of people, That's for the nations themselves began to become more and more estranged from biblical ideology. And the other one is Hashem's mysterious method of manipulating the affairs of the world in proportion or parallel to the conduct of the Jewish people.